What if goal setting was actually preventing you from hitting your goals? See, there are a lot of problems when it comes to goal setting. Let me name a few. First of all, most people don't have a framework for setting goals. Right? They just throw out something big and audacious and like, all right, I'm gonna make 100 million this year. All right, cool. But there's no framework or process. And of the people who are using a framework, let's say like SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, actionable, or realistic and timely, or whatever. Most people by Q2, most of us, we forget these goals, or we forget why we made them in the first place because we don't have them front and center. We write them down like in a journal or a notebook or in a Google Doc, and then after that, we're not looking at it every day. And so the goals that we set with so much intention end up getting pushed to the back of our thought, and then we end up forgetting about them. And another problem with goal setting is that when we are behind goal, we tend to beat ourselves up about it, especially as overachievers. But when we are ahead of goals, sometimes we take our foot off the gas and get a little comfortable and kill the momentum that got us there, right? So if you stick around to the end of this video, my promise to you is I'm gonna share with you a better way of planning and how I'm going to be planning in 2026 and beyond so that you can actually accomplish more of the things that you want to set out to accomplish. But before we get into that, let me tell you about my love-hate relationship with goal setting. So coming out of high school, right, this is now, I graduated class of 2019. So coming out of high school, my goal was to get a good college, get a good, originally I wanted to get into PACE. Pace University in New York City. I wanted to study business, and Pace was in downtown Manhattan, which is like pretty much like a business capital of the world almost. And so after getting my financial aid packages, Pace is a private institution. I was looking at the numbers, and it looked like Pace was definitely going to be a no-go. See, my grandparents raised me, and they didn't have the funds set aside for me to college. I love them to death, but they didn't have money set aside. And so Pace was instantly written off. So right there, first goal, right out the window from something that was out of my control. And then I started going to, start doing a little bit more applying, started looking at some of my other options, and University of Connecticut seemed to be a good option for me, so I ended up going to UConn, and my goal there was to graduate, get a degree in business, and hopefully find a job that I didn't hate. Well, let me tell you something. So I was class of 2019, so I started in 2019 fall semester, and then spring 2020, something interesting happened called the pandemic, right? Instantly, my college experience, right, what I originally signed up for was thrown out of the window by something entirely out of my control, right? I had no plan for the pandemic at all. I thought I was going to go to college like every other person that goes to college, get my 4-year degree, have fun, maybe go to some parties, attend some extracurriculars, and hopefully have a good enough resume by the time I graduate again to find a job I didn't hate. But now I'm on this online school thing, right? I'm taking these online classes, and I remember in the winter break heading into spring 2021, I ended up paying $500 for a real estate wholesaling course. And I just got my LLC filed, I got my logo, my domain name. I was ready to start getting into real estate investing. The course said all you gotta do is be 18, need no cash, no credit needed. And so I ended up signing up for this course thinking I'm gonna be a real estate millionaire. And I started calling up attorneys because Connecticut is an attorney closing state. And I remember the first 3 or 4 didn't know what on earth I was talking about. And then the 4th guy was like, real estate wholesaling, you can't do that in Connecticut, it's illegal. In order to transact in real estate, you need to have an active real estate license. Now, there's some wording that he left out, and again, check with your state, but in CT, you can legally wholesale as long as you stay off market. See, that he left out that part, but at the time, that was a professional. He was more experienced than me, he knew the law, he was an attorney, and so my goal to become a real estate investor, again, was thrown out of the window by something out of my control, right? I didn't know, the law, he didn't give me proper advice, but nevertheless, that led me into my next thing. So in spring 2021, and the real estate bug was already kind of planted in me, and I met with this guy who sparked the fire to get into real estate as an agent and then use that money to get into real estate as an investor. And so in spring 2021, I dropped out of college to pursue my real estate license. I was working 2 jobs. I was studying for my real estate exam. 6 months later, I ended up passing my real estate exam on a 3rd try, and I was gonna go all in. Again, I already had quit college, and this was gonna be the thing. I was gonna sell a bunch of houses. I live in a pretty high average price point area. I was gonna sell a bunch of houses, make a whole lot of money, use that money to get back into real estate investing, and then use all the notoriety to get into like public speaking and all this stuff. And so I fast forward a year later, I ended up pivoting from real estate as an agent entirely. So what I dropped out of college for, a little over a year later, I pivoted into something else. And then I ended up, at that time I was juggling too many different side hobbies. One of those side hobbies was teaching social media classes. So I was like, you know what, screw real estate. I'm gonna keep on teaching these social media classes for free, and then I'll start an agency, and I'll create content for the agents, and that's how I'll get paid. Well, after my first client, I realized I hated that business model. I hated creating content for other people. I love the teaching. I love helping people get breakthroughs and learn different things that they never heard before. But like the actual doing the content for other people, I hated it. So after my first client, I was like, yeah, pack this up. Not doing this ever again. And then I ended up finding my way into teaching AI. And after teaching some classes, some workshops, I was like, you know what, why don't I package everything that I know into a course for people to watch on their own time? And then I ended up putting my first course together, and I remember that first launch went horrible. I remember talking to the clients that purchased that very, very first course, and I was like, why did you buy? And they were like, well, I wasn't really interested in the course at all, but I knew you, and I knew you have a lot to offer, so we purchased the course anyway, which was kind of a nice way to saying what you offered sucked, but we trust you because you've given us value before in the past, but the course wasn't interesting at all. And so I say all these little quick stories to say I learned a very, very valuable lesson, and that is when we make plans, God laughs. So many times we're so confident with how we think everything is going to play out. Like, yeah, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and then I'm going to accomplish this, and by this date, this is going to happen, and that's going to lead me to the X. And we forget that we are not in control of anything that plays out. Right? Again, when I dropped out of college, when I was going to college, right, no one knew that there was going to be a pandemic, right? When I tried to get into wholesaling, I didn't know the real estate law at the time. When I tried to get my real estate license, I didn't know that I was not gonna enjoy the day-to-day of an agent. When I started my agency, I didn't know that I hated creating content for people, right? I had all these plans for how everything was gonna play out in my life, and I seen this old photo of, I wrote this on a wall. A buddy of mine, he had a recording studio on his wall. He had a mural of Nipsey Hussle, and he quoted him, and I think it said, I spoke something into the universe and it happened, or something like that. I forgot what the quote was. And he had everyone that came to the recording studio write a goal that they wanted to accomplish on the wall. So it was a giant mural of Nipsey Hussle plus a bunch of different goals from a bunch of different people that have come through and recorded. And I remember writing down on that wall, I'm gonna have an 100K net worth by 21 years old. I'm 24 now, and I still yet to accomplish that, unfortunately. But it's like, again, we're so confident with how we think everything is going to play out, and things can change in a moment. And again, my whole entrepreneurship journey, I mean, I'm only a baby as an entrepreneur still. I've been an entrepreneur now 4 years, so I'm a toddler now. I guess I graduated a bit. But like at every stage of business, when I thought I was going to set my heart onto something, right, if I were to have stayed too rigid, I would have never been able to reach that next level. For example, had I decided to just stick with Pace University, right, I would have never got to go to UConn and meet other people that I did, right? Had I went to college and then decided to, stay in college, I would have never gotten into real estate. Had I never gotten into real estate, I would have never started teaching social media classes. Had I never started teaching social media, I would have never started getting into AI. Had I never got into AI, I probably wouldn't be doing any of the stuff that I'm doing right now, and you wouldn't be hearing from me. And at each stage of my life, I thought I was going to do something, and then something changed my life, either personally or professionally, that I didn't expect, something beyond my control that caused me to have to shift everything. Now, the trajectory that I was going, the direction I was going was being a successful entrepreneur, right? But had I stuck too closely to my goals, none of this would have ever happened. And that's one of the big problems with goal setting, right? Is we think we have it figured out. And if we stay too rigid to these goals and we don't pivot, we're not flexible when needed, right? Bruce Lee talks about be like water. Sometimes water takes the form of a cup for a little while, but then you pour it out the cup and then water takes the form of nothing, right? It's the form of the floor, I guess you could say, if you just pour it on the floor. But if you scoop it back up and put it into a vase, now it's the form. Like, you have to understand what season of life that you're in and be able to flex and adapt to that particular season. But when the tides are changing, right, you have to be flexible enough and wise enough to see that coming and then adjust as necessary. But when you stay too strict to your goals, then you don't leave any room for that to happen. Another big problem with goal setting, right, especially if you follow the SMART framework, right, the last letter in the SMART acronym is timely or something, or timetable. I forget what it is. It's pretty much time. What's the time frame? Right? So you can do 3 months, 6 months, one goal, 1 year, whatever the time frame is. But the problem with that is that a lot of people think they can manage time, and that actually is one of the biggest myths, because we can't make more or take out, or there's no managing that we have of time. What we can do is prioritize. That's a different thing, right? Time prioritization is an important skill, but time management isn't even a skill. It's like a pseudo skill. You think it's a skill, but it's really not anything, right? It's a myth. You can't manage time. And so you can prioritize it, and some things and certain seasons will take priority over other things, but time management doesn't work because you don't know what tomorrow will look like. And tomorrow is also never promised. And so you can't believe that tomorrow is never promised and then also try to control when it is that you're going to accomplish these goals by. I got a quote from Myron Golden. He talks about, when it's your time to win, nothing can stop you from winning. But when it's not your time to win, nothing will make you win, right? Hey, and I'm butchering the quote, but the lesson that he shares in that quote that I butchered awfully is pretty much talking about, like, we don't know what God's timing is. So when we try to set these time limits on these parameters, on our goals and when we need to accomplish them by, we're trying to play creator of the universe a little bit, and that's not our role here on earth. And so that's two of the biggest problems that I see with goal setting. And so as I pivot here, let me make one thing clear. I do strongly believe that failing to plan is planning to fail. So I think that you have to plan, right? I just don't like the traditional way of goal setting, like the mainstream way that people teach you to set goals. I'm not a fan of that. And it wasn't until a couple months ago, I started attending this Christian business mastermind called C12. And in that mastermind, the December meeting, we talked about setting goals or planning for the new year. We didn't call it goal setting, but we talked about planning for the new year. And it really shifted everything that I thought about goal setting up to that point in time. And so I want to share with you some of the things. So as we start getting into the actual framework of how to plan for the upcoming year now, you could be watching this when it originally dropped on New Year's Eve, right? We dropped this video on December 30th of 2025. So you could be watching this to plan for all of 2026. You could be in a midway through 2026 and need to do some readjustment, or you could be watching this years in the future. But it doesn't matter when you're watching this video. This process for planning is going to be very beneficial for you actually achieving the things you want to set out and achieve. So let's kind of get into it. I want to ask you 4 quick questions. So just get your brain in the process of thinking. So if you're watching this and you can take notes, I would love for you to just take out a pen and paper now. But let me ask you a couple questions and read to you a quote that really stuck with me, right? So this says, a dangerous delusion is believing we can postpone obedience in what matters most, swiping our calendar like a credit card, and assuming we can pay later without the crushing interest of missed opportunities and irreversible consequences. This one is deep, so let me break this down a little bit further, right? I got my notes with me. I came prepared for this lesson, right? Dangerous delusion, right? Delusion meaning something that we believe to be true that isn't. So a belief that we have, a false belief, a misconception that we have is believing we can postpone obedience. What does that mean? That we can put off the things that we know we need to be doing, right? So a dangerous misconception that we have is that we can put off the things that we know we need to be doing in what matters most. So what matters most to you it's subjective, right? It could be right now your business, it could be your relationship, it could be your family, it could be your health, right? It doesn't matter what it is. It just, whatever matters most to you right now in this moment. Swiping our calendar like a credit card, right? There's a quote that this made me think of. Are we counting the days, or are we making the days count, right? A lot of us are just swiping the calendars, right? This day is done. We just finished another day, right? Slashing the days. Assuming we can pay later, meaning assuming we could do the things we know we need to do now, later, without the crushing interest of missed opportunities and irreversible consequences. I like this keyword here, crushing interest. Meaning the stuff we know we need to do that we're putting off, when we don't do them, it's not apples for apples. The stuff we know we need to do that we're putting off multiplies. The consequences and then the missed opportunities, those multiply, right? It's not one-to-one, like, hey, if I don't do one thing right now, I miss one thing later. No, if you don't do your thing that you need to do now, you miss two things later, sometimes even more, right? And so I want to ask you these 4 questions to get you in the mindset, or get your brain kind of warmed up for thinking. I want you to picture yourself on your deathbed, right? What actions, relationships, and priorities would you be grateful for if you pursued them? Why don't you pause this video and take some time, write some stuff down, think about it. Like, what things would you be grateful for if you pursued them? I know for me personally, becoming a better communicator, becoming a better coach, and becoming a better creative are 3 things that I know when it's all said and done, if I pursue those 3 things, I'd be grateful for them, right? I can go deeper into why, but I'm not for the purpose of this video. Second question, how intentionally are you pursuing them now? I know for me, again, I talked about coaching, right? I'm going to start seeking out books, podcasts, videos on how to become a more effective coach, how to ask more insightful questions, more thought-provoking questions, how to actually make transformations in people's life, right? So how intentionally are you pursuing those things that you said that you'd be grateful if you pursued? Third question, what are your most likely regrets, and how can you prevent them today? So when you're on your deathbed, what are the regrets that you are most likely to have, and how can you prevent them today from those happening, right? How can you prevent yourself from having those regrets on your deathbed? Last question, and this is for my people, my fellow Christians. What would evoke a well done, good, and faithful servant from Jesus? And what present distractions might cause me to miss out? That's a deep one. I'll let you guys sit on that one. But we're going to keep going with the video. These are some questions that, again, I spent some time thinking and really started, for me, really became apparent, right? Coaching, becoming a better creative, and becoming a better communicator. The 3 C's, I'm calling it. Like, I know if I spend the rest of my life just pursuing mastering those 3 things, that's going to help raise everything else that I want to do in my life. So, like, I want you to take some time before we keep going with the video to just really think about those 4 questions and answer them, right? Now that you're back, right? Now that we're warmed up, let's get into the difference between a goal setting and objective. So a goal is like, hey, I want to hit $250,000 in gross commission income next year. Or it could be, hey, I want to sell 50 homes, right, next year. It could also be something like, hey, I want to get my broker's license, or I want to change brokerages. Now, these are some examples of goals. If you wanted to make a SMART goals, I want to hit $250,000 in GCI with 25 buyers and 25 sellers by December 31st, 2026. That could be a SMART goal if you want to be super technical. But an objective is different, right? An objective is kind of like a rallying cry, right? It's something that gets everyone moving in the right direction, and it's kind of like an umbrella that all your goals kind of fit within. So when you have an objective, this is super important, especially for you, you know, your TLs, you broker owners, you mega teams, right? Mega agent leaders, right? This is super important because like goal setting usually is like just for me. Right, and let's say you set a team goal of like, hey, you know, we want the team to sell $1 million in GCI. That is our team goal. But what if someone in the team isn't financially motivated, right? Now what? Now you have someone that's not all in to the vision. Now you have someone that's not bought in. And so setting an objective is a lot better for getting buy-in from your people. Let me talk about a couple examples of objectives that have been big over the past couple of years, right? One that's been really big over the past couple of years, beat the buffalo. What is a buffalo? So the whole story of the buffalo is that during storms, buffaloes run to the storm and through the storm so that they can get out of the storm faster. Because they know if they run away from the storm is just kind of going to chase them along, and then they're kind of going to be in it. But if they go through the storm, they're going to go in opposite directions and pass it by faster. So that just talks about like when you have a challenge, instead of trying to run away from them, go through them, face them head on, and you can get over them faster. That's a big objective that has been gotten popular, especially at these large brokerages like KW. They talk a lot about it. And C12 also talks a lot about being the buffalo. Another example of an objective is if everything is important, nothing is. Now this objective is a little bit different. This objective is kind of deep diving on prioritization, right? Everything can't be important, because if everything is important, nothing is. It's pretty straightforward, but that is a mindset to have to when you're making decisions, whether you're the CEO or a brand new hire, right? Prioritizing is something that company wants to be their objective for the upcoming year. Another example is proper planning prevents poor performance. Right? Proper planning prevents poor performance. That objective is, again, talking about planning, like what we're doing today. Right? So their big objective is to make sure that in all their initiatives that they're planning that so that it doesn't fail, right? Or at least it prevents poor performance. So planning for them is a big objective for the upcoming year. Now, as we set an objective, I want to talk about clarity, because it is impossible to set a objective that your whole team can buy into without having clarity as the leader, as the visionary, as to what needs to get done and what's most important in the business. So I'm going to read two quick paragraphs for you guys to help get you guys a little bit on the to understand a little bit why clarity is so important for this next step, right? So clarity is a leadership virtue and a competitive advantage, right? Without it, teams lose alignment, resources are wasted, and results fall short. But with it, we can harness momentum, rally our people, and make meaningful progress on what matters most, right? And so as we prepare to define our annual primary objective, right, our aim needs to have laser sharp clarity, right? This single unifying objective will not capture everything we want to accomplish, but it will direct the energy, decisions, and collaborations of our teams by prioritizing the essential above all else. And we ensure that our strategic efforts gain traction and deliver lasting impact. I know that's a little bit of a mouthful, but creating a objective is pretty much what I've been doing my whole life without realizing it, right? Again, I wanted to be a successful entrepreneur. That was my objective for most of my life, whether I realized it or not, coming out of high school, right? But I wanted to be successful, but I had all these different pivots, all these different goals, but all the goals were pushing toward the same direction of success, right? And so now I'm being a lot more intentional with my business and the goals I want and the objectives that I'm setting. And so another question. All right, so I want to ask you guys another quick question really quickly here in the back. Before we get into the actual framework, right? Sorry, I just had to look at my notes really quickly. What area of your business most urgently needs improvement this upcoming year, or this upcoming quarter, or this upcoming month, depending on when you're listening to this video, right? What area of your business most urgently needs improvement. I want you guys to take some time to think about that, right? If you don't know what that is, then you won't be able to create a good objective for your business. If you don't know what most urgently needs improvement, then you're going to set an objective for something that's already working and doesn't need fixed, and now you're going to have a bottleneck that's preventing you from growth. And because all your energy, time, bandwidth, resources are all pushing towards this one objective that doesn't even really need fixing, and you're ignoring the thing that actually does, your growth is going to be capped. So think about it for a second. Pause the video if you need to. I know for me right now, my annual objective, right, I'm going to get into it, is going to be focused around promotions, right? Letting people know about what I need to do. I'll get into that in a bit, but once you have that written, let's actually get into the framework for this new planning process of how to set an objective instead of goal setting, right? So let's get right into it. So annual primary objective, let's get into it. So the first thing that you need to do is write down your annual primary objective. So mine for the year, and you could feel free to adopt mine. And this kind of stems from something I heard in real estate, right? Where it says, don't be a secret agent, right? Now, obviously I'm not an active realtor anymore, so I'm not an agent. So I kind of revised it a little bit to don't be the world's best kept secret. That is my annual 2026 objective. Right, is to not be the world's best kept secret. I know that I have a lot of value that I can provide to a lot of people, but because so many people don't know how they could work with me, I'm losing out on business, and people are finding other people that teach AI and marketing and stuff like that to work with because I haven't done a good enough job of letting people to know how they can start working with me. One good way is if you want to sign up for my AI challenge. Shameless plug, but link down below. We do a 5-day AI marketing challenge on how to become the go-to expert without having to dance in front of your open house or do any of the trendy, stupid stuff that the gurus are telling you to do. Even if you're camera shy or not tech savvy, like this training will help transform your business. But that's a story for another day. But again, I'm going to be more proactively telling people about what it is that I do, right? And don't be the world's best kept secret. For me, also goes to, I have a team of me, my editor, for my editor as well, right? I want him to show off like what he's able to do, and so I'm going to start putting his work on display so he can, we can attract more work for him and stuff like that. So don't be the world's best kept secret is my annual primary objective. I want you to think for a second, what's yours? What is yours? Now you could steal mine, right? Because a lot of realtors tend to slack off on their marketing, especially when money is tight. They tend to put marketing to the side. So if you've been slacking on the marketing, just take mine. But once you have your annual primary objective, I want you to think of your why. I want you to think, what will inspire you to complete this annual primary objective in the coming year, right? Will your leadership team be able to find themselves and their role in the annual primary objective? Will it keep everyone focused on what is most important to the business? So as you think about those questions, I'm going to share with you why this annual primary objective is important to me and what will inspire me to achieve it, right? If I hit my annual primary objective all year long, right? If I keep that front of mind, don't be the world's best kept secret. Let people know about what I do, right? That'll inevitably bring more revenue, right? Which will inevitably improve my quality of life. And because now I am taking care of my grandparents, I just moved out, like I have a lot of stuff going on in my personal life, by me not being the world's best kept secret, I'll be able to increase my revenue, which more importantly will increase the quality of life for the people around me, right? And so that's what is going to inspire me all 2026. But if you don't have something to inspire you, this annual primary objective is just going to fall flat, just like one of another goal will. So you have to have clarity as to what you want the objective to be, but also like what's going to inspire you on those days that things get dark to achieve it, right? So boom. After you have your why, so we have the objective, we have the why. How are you going to achieve that? What steps are you going to take to reach this annual primary objective? So for me, I have 3 steps, right? I'm going to be doing more content, more speaking engagements, and in my content and at my speaking engagements, I'm going to be doing more promoting, right? Specifically my AI challenge. I'm going to be letting everyone know about my 5-day AI challenge, right? Whether it's my content, whether it's my public speaking engagement, but everything is going to be pushing there. So that's going to be my 3 key steps, right? If I do more content, more people will be able to find me. If I do more speaking, more people will know about who I am and what I do. And if I do more promoting, more people can actually sign up for the services that I offer. So that's going to be the 3 steps I follow to make sure I'm not the world's best kept secret, right? Now, one thing as you're doing this planning that you want to spend some time thinking about is what is the greatest anticipated challenge or constraint to you hitting this objective? I know for me personally, I suffer with shiny object syndrome, right? I tend to get a lot of ideas, and I am also really big on hitting the iron while it's hot. And so when I get an idea, I try to do the idea right then and there instead of doing what I actually know I'm supposed to be doing, which is great for building half-built bridges, but half-built bridges doesn't build a big business, right? So I need to stop doing that now. Second thing is boredom, right? I think success sometimes is very monotonous. Like you're doing the same thing all the time. At least for me, I have an online business. I have the same 5 tabs open all day long for the most part that I'm kind of just searching back and forth through. But if I can sit with that boredom and know that out of the boredom comes all the fun and exciting things that I want to do, then I know I'll be able to achieve this annual primary objective. Now, knowing that you're going to have challenges and constraints, I want you to think of how are you going to hold yourself accountable. So I know for me, every Monday on Zoom at 8 p.m., me and a group of really close friends, we meet on Zoom and share our goals, our key KPIs, how well we did on them, right? So we're tracking our KPIs and what our plan for that next week is. And so we meet every single week. Right, every single week we're meeting to keep each other accountable. We have to report to the group our numbers and all that stuff. So that's gonna help me keep me accountable. And then once a month I meet with this group called C12, and that is with a lot more high level, super high level entrepreneurs and business owners. And so I'm the bottom of the barrel in that group. And so I definitely don't want to waste their time. And so we meet in person monthly, and reporting to them hey, what's going on in my life, what's changed in the last month. I definitely want to make sure that I don't show up to the next meeting dealing with the same stuff I was dealing with the last meeting, right? Because those meetings are monthly. Whereas the Zoom call with my boys, that's weekly. So I have built into my plan accountability to make sure I stay on track with this annual primary objective. And then the last thing, right, is metrics of success. What are the KPIs? And if you're not familiar with the term, key performance indicators, what are the signals, the things, the data, the numbers that you're going to track that's going to make sure that you are on track for this objective, right? I think the quote is, what you focus on expands, I think the quote is, right? So my KPIs, or at least some of the KPIs that I'm going to be tracking this upcoming year, right, is going to be YouTube watch time, right? YouTube watch time is going to be a big time. One of the reasons why that's my KPI is because there's a rule called the 7-11-4 rule. We won't get too deep into it, but pretty much saying if someone watches, so for someone to go from stranger to buyer online, they need to watch 7 hours of content through 11 different touch points across 4 different platforms. So if my watch time is increasing, I know more people are watching time with me, spending more time with me, and immersion creates conversion, so I'll be able to know that if more people are watching, eventually more people will be converting as well. Second thing is opt-ins, right? Opt-ins to my challenge, my newsletter, right? My freebies that I offer, right? Those leads, right? If I know people are opting to my stuff, they're getting my email sequence, and now the more my list grows, the more I know that when it comes time to promote something, I get more sales. The last thing is going to be challenge sales, right? How many people are joining my challenge every other month? And so those are going to be the 3 KPIs that I'm tracking. But for you and your business, what are those KPIs, right? It could be booked calls. It could be comments on engagement on Facebook or Instagram, your preferred platform. It could be showings done. It could be appointments set. What are those KPIs that are going to keep you on track? And so as we kind of bring this to an end, I'm just going to do a quick high-level overview. You want to set your annual objective, not just a goal, an objective, right? That objective is going to be the direction pretty much that you and everyone on your team is kind of heading in. From there, take some time to think about your why. Like, what's going to inspire you to actually stay on track and hit this objective? Think about your how, right? What are the key steps to achieve it? What are the metrics of success that you're going to track to make sure you're on track to achieving it? What are the greatest challenges or constraints that may get in the way? And how are you going to hold yourself accountable, right? If you have all those built in, if you take some time this, New Year's Eve to do that, I promise you the next year will be a lot better than the last. With that being said, that is all for this video, and I will see you in the next one.